Hey guys, it's Jenna. Welcome back to my channel today. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking the eyeshadow palettes that I have tried in 2021 so far. I'm going to be ranking them from the worst to the best. Now, there's quite a few palettes to talk about today. And some of them, it was kind of like splitting hairs between what made them rank where they were. It's definitely kind of hard to do these types of videos, but it's always questions that I get about which palette would you recommend over all the others, or which palette from this one versus this one is just a little bit better. So let's talk about all of the eyeshadow palettes I have tried in 2021 and how they rank right now. So the palette that is the worst that I have tried this year so far, and it's not like it's terrible across the board, but out of all of the rest, it unfortunately placed in last. This is the Valentino palette, and if you guys don't remember, I actually did a video testing out so much of the Valentino makeup. Valentino is a high fashion house. They came out with makeup this year, and this is the kind of concept of palette that they decided to do. So this is one layer, and then you open the door to the second layer, and what it's meant to do is it's meant to be an all-in-one type situation. So the two shades at the bottom here are supposed to be your base shades, so the ones that you use first. We have one that's kind of like a beige color, and then we have a matte black, and then you're supposed to use as many of these colors on top that you would like in order to create your color when it comes to the eye look. Then if you want to add some sparkle, there's the gold and the pearl, and that's also on the bottom part of this palette, and it's basically supposed to add that finishing touch of shimmer to your eye look. When I used these shadows in my trying Valentino makeup video, I actually found they were actually not too bad. There was some fallout when it came to those very foiled top shadows that you're supposed to, you know, touch up your eye with. Not too bad though. But this shade here gave me some trouble. So when I was actually using this palette, this shade was quite patchy. It was quite stiff. It also performed quite poorly compared to the rest of the palette. So it really pulled this palette down when it came to quality, but also the shade of this shade, so the actual color, seemed to not really fit either. I also didn't find the packaging to be the best when it came to this brand, unfortunately. I actually thought that they could have done way better. This is actually one of the better products in the line, but there's quite a few that have really lightweight, flimsy packaging. I do know they were trying to, you know, do some environmentally friendly packaging, which is totally fine, but then in my opinion, the price should have been a lot less. This outer casing is probably the only like real luxury experience that you get with this makeup because it has that nice like red gloss packaging. But other than that, the interior is, you know, quite flimsy looking, and the shadows are good, but they're not great. This kind of concept of having your whole look in one palette was very unique to me, so I will give them credit for that. But this shade, unfortunately, just didn't do it for me, and the shade was so off that I haven't used it since. So overall, last place for the Valentino eyeshadow palette. I hope you guys don't kill me when it comes to the next products that we're talking about here. I know a lot of you guys really are big fans of Chanel, and there's nothing wrong with their eyeshadow palettes when it comes to quality. It's just a very specific look that you're after when you purchase Chanel. In my opinion, they're a little bit softer. They're not super like pigment forward. The Chanel Le Beige Tender palette from this year's Le Beige collection. This is a palette that, in my personal opinion, definitely delivers. It's 100% still really good quality when it comes to consistency across the board. It is much more muted, but still tasteful and very classy, of course. But I personally think that it was ranked where it was because this is one that to me still requires a specific style or a specific look that you're after if you want this. If you want quite an intensity from some of these shadows, you're gonna really have to build them up. This one in particular is kind of like a topper shade in this palette, and I do feel like when you look at the shades in pan, they almost translate like they're gonna be a little bit deeper or more intense, but they are quite light. So you're just meant to build them up as you go. Once you do build them up and you prime your eye, they stay all day. but I do find they crack roughly around 12 hours or so after I personally wear them. Other than that, it's still a gorgeous palette, especially if you're looking for something from Chanel. I think if you're not familiar with Chanel and basically what to expect, some people have suggested that they're quite expensive for what they are, but personally, I do think the quality is there. I just think you have to prepare yourself for a specific eye look. If you're looking for the pigmentation of Natasha or Pat McGrath, that's just not what you're going to get with these. It's a very distinct style, but still very classy. Now the palette in 9th place is basically its partner in this collection. So it's the other Le Beige palette. This is the Intense palette. This one I actually found to be a little bit more intense, so hence the name. The pigmentation of these just seem to kind of come a little bit more forward compared to the Tender palette. This is one that seems to get a little bit less layers to accomplish more of a bolder look overall. So I really do like how this palette has those nice deep rich browns, some golds. We do have kind of an interesting olive undertone shade, but this looks much more olive in pan than how it translates. It almost translates a little bit deeper and more on like a gray side versus the green of this. So do note that. Both of these palettes have a very similar composition. They do have those like shimmer toppers, we have some nice satins, and we do have a matte in each palette as well. You are going to get a much more softer, lighter look overall. This is actually very surprising. This is the first eyeshadow release, I believe, from this brand as well. And unlike Valentino, this one really, really surprised me, and it actually edged up over the Chanel products. What do you know? This is the Christian Louboutin eyeshadow palette, and this is the color story that I picked up. There are 2 others, so they're basically bunches of 6. The quality of these shadows is really beautiful. They are more so on the softer side, but they're not as soft as the Chanel. So in my opinion, they do offer a little bit more versatility to add some intensity with regards to color payoff and the intensity you can build on the eye. Now, the downfall of this palette and why it was placed where it was the casing is extra. So it's the exact same price as the eyeshadow inside, and to me that's crazy. I mean, they're a high fashion house. Of course they can charge a premium for luxury, but this is a new level, and I think they were trying to maybe be a trendsetter with this, but I think people just find it annoying. I'm gonna be honest. The colors in here I also find are a little bit more, I guess, like Jenna appropriate. That's just a preference thing though, but I do love how some of these shades have that really nice embossment. Almost looks like the sole of the shoe, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful palette. So definitely an expensive splurge, but if you are able to get it, it is very, very stunning. Okay, palette number 7, you guys might be surprised by. This is the Natasha Denona Zendo palette. I definitely think that it is a nice palette. I've been loving it. I have been enjoying creating looks with it. It is absolutely valid that the shades are softer. That is a fact. Some of these shimmers don't have that same pigment intensity behind them that I'm used to with some other shimmers. I think that's supposed to speak to her inspiration behind the palette, but I agree with you guys. I wish that there was more intensity behind some of those shades, and that's why it's ranked where it is. I do have a couple patchy mattes in here as well. The Calm matte here, as well as Relief. These 2 in the center. They're not total crap shades by any means, but they do provide a little bit more difficulty when building up compared to the mattes I'm used to from her. So this isn't a flawless palette when it comes to shade by shade. Everything is fantastic. There's definitely a little bit of duds here and there. Not my favorite quality of this, but overall something that I have been able to work with. So this is in palette number 7 because the intensity of those shades is not quite where I'm used to with Natasha, but it's still an excellent palette. I'm not sure how she got this palette from the mini Zendo. It's quite a different color story to me, and they don't even seem to be along the same lines. But it's still a palette I've been loving. The palette in 6th position is actually the palette that is on my eyes today. If you haven't already guessed, this is the KKW Beauty. This is the Camo palette. I have just got this palette not that long ago, and I've been able to do quite a few looks with it at home in order to test every single shade so I can give you guys my thoughts. This surprised me for sure. It's definitely a palette that offers mattes that are a little bit more on the powdery side. They're still creamy, but they have more of a powdery finish. So they do make that user friendliness very, very high. This is the palette here. I'm gonna hold it a lot more zoomed in for you, but It's hard to hold this with one hand unless I do this. Actually, that's better. Okay, so this is the palette here. It does offer some shimmers. It offers some really nice mattes. The mattes, to me, they do remind me of the ColourPop formula, in my opinion. They're not quite the same, but they do have that very similar quality of that slight creaminess with a bit of a powdery finish. So that is the mattes in this one. And then the shimmers also are not like intensity wise like Natasha, but they still have enough intensity and pull behind them that they hold their own. They're definitely very impressive. This color story suits the camo look or the camo feel to me perfectly. I think she nailed it when it comes to that. I personally feel very surprised by this. I'm not sure why. I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was just expecting something different. This palette here is made in the USA, and you can see it has some gorgeous shimmers and mattes, and I feel like the balance is very, very good. Some shimmers are a tad more foiled than others, but all of the shades are very, very easy to use, and if you're a beginner with makeup, you won't be disappointed with this. If you're an expert, you won't be disappointed either. The palette in number 5 position is a lovely one, and that is the PATRIOK Major Dimension Eyeshadow Palette. Now, I put this in palette number 5 for the reason that this palette possesses 2 cream shades that I just find to be a little bit tougher when it comes to formulation and how user-friendly it is. It's not my favorite creamy, easy-to-use product. It just seems to dry really fast. It makes me feel like I'm tugging on my lid a little bit too much, and when it sets so fast and you're really pulling, trying to blend, it just isn't, to me, the most enjoyable experience. When I'm looking for a cream base, I'm looking for quite a bit of slip that will give me some time to massage and blend into the eye and then set down at an appropriate time. Not just crazy fast, like, blah, trying to get the even application before it settles, right? The rest of the shades here, we have mattes on the bottom row, we have some shimmers on the top. This packaging is absolutely going to blind you. I do apologize, but he does have his PATRIOK like labeling in the mattes there. The shimmers are beautiful, pinks and that gorgeous pearl white at the end. Absolutely stunning palette. This is palette number 5. Let's talk about palette number 4. This is the Pat McGrath Labs Luxe Quad in the Venus and Furs Voyeuristic palette. There's so many names for this one. Venus and Fleurs, sorry, not Furs. Venus and Fleurs Luxe Quad. Voyeuristic Vixen. There we go. Lots of terminology with this one. Beautiful shades, you guys. I cannot stress that enough. But it wasn't placed higher in this countdown because of the fallout. The fallout is something. It is something with this one. Absolutely gonna fall all over your face, especially this side of the palette with regards to those gorgeous foiled shimmers. They are quite Falloutville, if you know what I mean. A tip for this is to use glitter glue, although it's an additional step. She's actually known to have very beautiful, almost interesting, multidimensional like shimmers that don't have such a fallout mess attached to it. So to me personally, that has let me down. I do wish that this was a bit of a more pressed formula that didn't give me that much trouble. Once you get glitter glue in hand and you do actually work with them that way, they are stunning. The matte in here is gorgeous. It's very reminiscent of the Fire Rose matte, that really rich burgundy. And this is a gorgeous shimmer over here. It does provide some fallout as well, but not nearly as bad as the other side. So all in all, a fantastic quad. Not my favorite from her when it comes to the fallout, because it really is a true issue with this one. So please use glitter glue when it comes to applying them. This is palette number 4. We are taking a short intermission before the top 3 to share a quick little hi from my dog Harvey. I honestly get in such big trouble when I don't show him in my videos now. You guys get so sad. But he's making sure that we're ranking these eyeshadow palettes appropriately. He already did his approval of the countdown, so let's continue on. The palette in 3rd position is actually one that doesn't even contain a whole bunch of eyeshadows, only contains 3 shadows, and then the rest of it is a face palette. But I was really impressed with these eyeshadows in this palette that I had to include it. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in a Palette Pretty Blush Beauty. This is actually one of 2 releases from this year. She does do a ton of these whole looks in a palette where you've got the powder, the bronzer, the blush, everything included in one particular palette. So this is Pretty Blush Beauty. It's the lighter version of the 2. The top row here is fantastic, you guys. It's so nice, very easy to use, very user-friendly. Pigmentation is great, shimmers are great, fallout is under control, it's nothing crazy. Longevity of these shadows is also amongst the top in my collection, so I'm very, very impressed with this one. So here is the palette up close. It is stunning. Look at all of those shades there. The top row is the eyeshadow shades, and this is essentially a gorgeous look. I use the second shade all over the lid. I add some sparkle with the first one and then do some nice shadowing on the outer edge with number 3. It is so, so pretty. The palettes, I'm gonna say palettes parallel for the number 2 position. This is the collaboration between Sydney Grace and Temptalia. This is the trio of palettes that was just released not that long ago, and they are of such good quality that I ranked them extremely high for this countdown. Now, I could not pick a favorite. I'm getting a lot of questions about which palette is your favorite. This is the first palette. I did do a first impressions of this, and now I'm going to give you guys my full review on these 3. This is a gorgeous collection of shadows. I absolutely love these. I'm actually wearing this shade in my last video for those of you guys asking. And then the next palette is Quintessence. That is this one, and this one just has a really beautiful overall gorgeous greeny blue theme. It's like kind of celestial, out of this world, super, super pretty, cool toned. Absolutely love this one too. But this is the most colorful one. Interesting distinction between like the colors of the rainbow here. Almost every single color is accounted for except for orange, I guess, right? Yeah, so there you go. It's almost a near rainbow when it comes to this palette. The only thing is like splitting hairs when it comes to how I reviewed these. There's certain mattes in these palettes that are just a smidgen stiffer than some other mattes. But it's not like it's a huge deal. I mean, you build them up a little bit and they tend to be okay, but there's some that are building up a little bit easier on the eye versus some others. But with regards to the shimmers, they're all very consistent. Minor fallout if you do actually apply too many layers of the shimmer, because then your lid will be saturated and it will tend to fall a bit. But 1 to 2 layers is okay. In my opinion, the shimmers are extremely consistent amongst the 3. When it comes to these 3, you can't go wrong. In my opinion, all of them are fantastic, with the exception of a couple of them like literally splitting hairs, but I think it was an amazing collaboration, so congrats to the brand and Temptalia once again. I love them. Now let's talk about the last palette, the number 1 palette, and it's the Norvina palette. This is the Norvina Pro Pigment Volume 5. There we go. I feel like this year has extremely long eyeshadow palette names for some reason. Quality, 10 out of 10. I haven't found a dud in this palette. It's absolutely beautiful. Creamy mattes, gorgeous shimmers, different types of shimmers with some topper coat qualities and some that are, you know, a little bit lighter. The redundancy of shades is the only thing that is kind of like, could be better, right? So the redundancy here and here. I did talk about them when I did do a test of this. They're extremely close when it comes to swatch. So I do wish, I mean, with this many shades, I guess there's a higher likelihood to have some redundancy, but I still wish that it would have been fixed. So that is the first kind of thing with it. And of course, the big size of this does not make it travel friendly. But other than that, you guys, all of the shades inside are stunning. I haven't found any issues with application, with how they layer, with how they blend. I don't know. I think I was very, very lucky with this palette. I think it's amazing. If you like purple, you're going to love it. And I love purple, so this is a beautiful palette. Definitely in the first position for this year so far, ranking all of the eyeshadow palettes from 2021. We still have the rest of the year, so maybe there'll be some interesting additions to this countdown coming up in the near future. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your favorite palette from this year so far, and until my next one, take care and stay safe. Bye, guys.